Hello, John. So coming from wefox, amazing company that even French president is taking notes when you're speaking. I think it's amazing to hear, how, French are listening even, to international team coming from Berlin. How do you see I will open the chat, first maybe to talk about the insurance industry where you're coming from and all the global trends that are coming to us with COVID-19 and all the changes. How do you see this fast changing pace in the global level?
In terms of, business overall, I think that what we've already seen is that technology certainly played a major role in that change. And we're already seeing that across a number of businesses. Interestingly, we're using Zoom for this call, and we already know the growth of Zoom during the pandemic period. So that's testimony to how the pandemic's affected businesses. I think what it's done also is present a new paradigm for doing business. Once upon a time, I think the thought of everybody working from home was a bit of a not so much a no-go zone, but certainly most people didn't really give it serious thought. And then the pandemic struck, and then we were forced. We had no choice but to work from home. And lo and behold, we could do it easily. So business hasn't slowed down. If anything, it's accelerated. And with wefox, we've certainly witnessed that. Our company's grown very successfully in the last 12 to 18 months. And the pandemic only reinforced the business model for wefox. What it did was illustrate the need to have technology to enable advisors to be able to deliver their work much more efficiently, and be able to engage in a better customer experience. So for us, we were very fortunate in the sense of the pandemic making the business case for us. So I think what we're seeing now, certainly in the last 6 to 8 months, there's been a few insurtechs, digital insurance companies that have gone out and raised considerable sums of money. And I feel that actually the pandemic has played a role in that. And that's why I think we're starting to see a bit of an upward surge in our industry, but across the whole piece, particularly around companies that are technology enabled. And so it's been quite an interesting period for us, and the way that we've experienced our growth. So really the pandemic has done more than what we would have hoped for in the sense of validating our business model.
Great. So always there are opportunities when there are changes. It can move up or down, and you find your actually roller coaster getting a rocket power actually up, all the way up. Yeah. And when you think of these trends, do you think this will continue now when we're getting vaccinated and there change? Would people return to the old, or it will be hybrid in the future? Combining all what we learned in these last 2 years.
Yeah, I think what we're going to experience, Niko, is probably a bit of a hybrid model. I think there's a number of factors that we've got to look at here. One of which is that we're not fully understanding the full implications of the virus. What we are hearing is that it mutates, it changes. So that in of itself presents challenges for a number of industries, and governments as well. So I think that to make any firm decision about returning to work, those sorts of things are probably a little bit premature. We've been able to experience a successful running of a business over the last 12, 16 months with very little disruption. We've had to adjust to the changing circumstances, and that also has presented its own challenges, both for individuals as well as organizations. But by and large, many companies, and ours included at wefox, have been able to successfully adapt to this new paradigm. Going forward, I think that what we'll see is a hybrid in which, you know, companies will offer their employees the option of being able to work from home or return to the office. So certainly at wefox, we're looking at those sorts of options and giving people the opportunity to decide whether they would prefer to continue working from home or have an office, and they can opt to take that in. So, you know, I think businesses, certainly I can envisage that going forward, more businesses will need to be flexible in the way they support their staff and the operations of their business. And I think that's going to be a necessity. This is probably going to be, if to use a language, this will be the new norm for companies to be more flexible so they can adapt rapidly to the changing circumstances. One of the benefits of the pandemic is actually it's forced all organizations across nearly every industry to review how they can operate under such testing circumstances. I can't recall a time in history where such a situation has had such a global impact, and it's really kind of touched nearly every aspect of our lives. And you know, the world pretty much went into a bit of a lockdown. However, businesses have found different ways, very creative and innovative ways to continue operating. Some, sadly, you know, and you know, we must acknowledge this, have not weathered the storm as successfully as others, and that's a, you know, really terrible shame to see. But the ones that have managed to move forward, and there are others that have really seized the agenda. So wefox, for example, is one of those businesses really seized it, saw the opportunity to be able to accelerate our growth during this period, by virtue of the fact that people had to work from home. But because we are a technological business, we are an insurance business, but, you know, powered by technology. And as a result, it really consolidated our position in the marketplace. And you know, it was one of the reasons that I believe investors saw the potential in it for the future. And so it's probably why we were able to raise such a successful Series C round when we closed 650 million, which is a world record round for a digital insurance company that gave us a post-money valuation of 3 billion. So I'd say that the pandemic has presented some challenges and also opened up a lot of new opportunities as well.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, when we looking at this, let's say industry of insurance, if I'm right, I mean 5.2 trillion industry in a way, and you find a way actually how to bring it to the next century with your approach. I mean, convincing investors, you know, as much as I know, from Target to Fin to LGT to all the investors that it made syndication, and you're now valued as the most, let's say, most valued European fintech, if you call it this way, fintech and insurance tech in a way.
Yeah, you know, certainly in the space of insurance. So as a digital insurance company, we are, you know, right up there. We're very grateful for, you know, these amazing valuations that's been given to us. And we're very grateful also for having such wonderful investors who really believe in our business model and see the potential in it. As you rightly pointed out, it's a $5.2 trillion industry. And, you know, right now we're at the very, very, very tiny percentage end of that. However, our investors see that. And again, coming back to the point of the pandemic, it really highlighted that massive opportunity. And so our aim is, you know, not to take part, but to take over. We're here to really establish a global position. This is why we were able to successfully raise such a significant round of 650 million for the Series C, by far the largest ever that's been raised, and gives us that formidable opportunity to push forward into the global space. And we aim to become the #1 insurtech within the next 10 years.
Yeah, that's great. So would you compare this like with maybe in classic industries like Ryanair brought to the airlines, let's say, with new model, I remember buying tickets, sometimes before, printing on paper, and then it just overnight went digital, everything. So I think, is that the direction?
That's an interesting analogy. I think that I believe the point that you're making there is the disruption. When Ryanair and EasyJet and the low-cost airlines came in, they were a major disruption to quite a static industry at the time. You had a certain established players, these incumbents that had cemented somewhat of a dominance, and the customers had got used to paying fairly high prices, experiencing a lower quality of service. So the barriers, I suppose, to entry were, I guess, high from one perspective, and certainly from a customer experience side, it wasn't that great. So the likes of Ryanair and EasyJet, and now more recently Wizz Air and all of that, I mean, yes, they have disrupted the aviation industry from that perspective, and we've seen that kind of spread elsewhere. So to compare us to that from a standpoint of disruption, then yes, we saw an opportunity within the insurance space where you had great, huge companies, incumbents that have been in the business for several decades, shall we say. And they've established quite a dominance over the industry. Yet what we saw was there's I would say, an opportunity. Customer experience wasn't that great. You've got insurance. It's got a poor reputation, known to be complex, opaque. Its language and customer experience is poor. There's a lot of what do you call it? Paperwork that kind of goes with it. So there's a lot of legacy systems that are attached to it. And we just saw a huge opportunity to do away with that. However, what we saw as we began that journey, by introducing technology to enable our agents to deliver a better level of service, as well as lower their administration and operational costs, we immediately saw that actually, rather than go a kind of direct to consumer, which is what many of our peers have done, and many have done that with reasonable degrees of success, we realized that actually the real growth was in the relationship side of things. So even if you look at the likes of the aviation industry, the key issue there is, whilst that may be low cost, one of the things that they were able to provide is a better experience. And in insurance, it really is a people-to-people business at the end of the day. It's about human interaction. Insurance touches nearly every aspect of our lives. So there's a very personal agenda attached to insurance. It's just that it's being given such a bad rap. So what we realized, whilst we were building the business and watching our peers going direct to them, was that actually agents were central to the business. And in fact, they were almost crucial to our growth. So we realized that actually the real business, if we want to look at the kind of models, ours was in the relationships, right? Building better relationships with our customers. And we do that via our agents. And therefore, if we can provide them with the technology to be able to do their jobs better, they'll be able to serve their customers, which are also our customers, much better. And therefore, it's a total win-win for everybody concerned.
Yeah, that's also in a way by your slogan. You want to do it digital, you want to do it fast, but you want to keep it fair also. When we have this analogy, yeah. Yeah,
totally. I mean, in wefox, we say, insurance, but simple. So essentially what we're saying is insurance doesn't need to be complicated. Let's make it really simple for the end customer. And we'll do that through technology. So I believe, simplicity is the key. I think it was Da Vinci who said that simplicity is the I don't know, a mother of genius or something like that. I've
Yes.
obviously lost the train of it, but, you know, it was something along those lines. So, you know, whilst we're not laying claim to any great artist of history, what we are saying is that, you know, often things that sometimes serve best are made simple. And we believe that insurance doesn't need to be complicated, doesn't need to be opaque. And it certainly can deliver an infinitely better service than what people are currently experiencing if we can only provide the right tools. And that's essentially what we've done.
Yeah, that's sounds simple, but I believe it's a lot of work. I mean, to make it simple, I would love to see the pitch, how you did it, you know, to raise these things. You know, it must be amazing work behind, you know, to just exactly what you said. I mean, when you make it as simple as possible, you know, and not the words that you can cut out, you know, then it's and also when the kids can understand actually the model, that's what is the secret sauce to say of this fast growth of the company? Is that starting from the team, from idea, you know, that was convincing the let's say multicultural Berlin, attracting also international team to join, you know? How do you see it from your perspective?
The secret sauce of the company, that's a wonderful question, and one of the more challenging ones to answer. I don't believe there's one secret sauce, but if there was one within the company, really it boils down to our purpose, which is make people be safe. We're very clear about that. That is the, you know, the raison d'etre of wefox, to make people be safe. That is the purpose that drives all our decision making, how we apply, you know, our product development. Because at the end of the day, that's what insurance is all about. It's all about making people be safe. And what we want to do is use technology to be able to accelerate that, make it simpler, easier, more convenient. So that's probably our secret sauce, that what we've got there is a purpose that brings the best minds and the best talents to the business to focus in a very singular way on achieving that purpose. And, you know, it is a very lofty aim. You know, we pointed out that it's a $5.2 trillion industry. You know, we're very early now in our business. Don't forget, we're only 6 years old. You know, despite the fact that we've closed a record Series C round of 650 million, giving us a post-money valuation of 3 billion. You know, we're 6 years old, so we're very, very early in our journey. And you know, whilst we're growing rapidly and quite successfully, I believe that all of that's due to the fact that we've got some of the best talent in the business because of our purpose, right? And that purpose permeates across the company, in the sense of creating the kind of culture that people want to be a part of. Now, at the end of the day, we still have to be a business. You know, we're not one of these kind of tech bro companies where you come up and you know, it's all, you know, fizzy drinks in the fridge and, you know, open breakout areas where you can play foosball and that sort of thing. You know, we certainly have all of that, but that's kind of, you know, extras that are thrown in there. The culture really comes down to what we're all there to do. And then once we're there to do it, it's a discipline. It's a discipline in the sense of being able to work in a very single-minded, focused manner to get ourselves in this direction. And I believe that's what's driven us. You know, we're a high-performing business. And, you know, we attract the kinds of people that want to come to our company, that want to work on something that has such meaning attached to it. And as a result, they're willing to give more to that endeavor. So, you know, having a business that is driven by a purpose attracts the right kinds of people, then therefore you end up building the kind of culture that is, you know, to use an expression, fit for purpose. Yeah. And that's, I would probably say that's how it comes about. So, you know, we're very fortunate to be able to have such a company with such great talent. It's a real privilege and joy to be working for the business. I've been there for now 2.5 years, and I honestly, Niko, feel like I'm not going to work. I'm going to a place where not only am I'm going to have tremendous amounts of fun, I'm doing something that has a real purpose and meaning that is not only going to transform the industry, it's history making in of itself, but we're going to be playing a significant role in reinventing insurance at scale, and redefining the definition of insurance. So these things, when you put them into context, it's a real privilege to be able to go to work knowing that actually, I'm playing a small part in something really big, and I get to hopefully look back on it one day and tell the story to my grandchildren, and they'll go, oh gosh, you were part of that, and say, yes, I was. So I think that what makes us special is the purpose, and as a result, everything flows from that.
Yeah. And Berlin is definitely also the let's say environment for let's say rocket powered companies, not just rocket.
I mean, yeah, totally. I mean,
in
Berlin,
Europe,
Berlin's certainly cultivating that reputation. You only need to look at the unicorns that have been recently coming out over the last 18 months, many of which have been coming out from Berlin and Germany as well. So, as a country, it's really starting to seize the tech agenda. We're starting to see more investment coming in. There's a lot of talent there. That's, Berlin, for example, is an international city. It's a creative city. And, it's a real fun city. So as a result, it's got the right ingredients to attract the kinds of people that you'd want coming in to work for, hyper growth startups. And the infrastructure in itself is fantastic. You've got great transport, great schools, great education system. And then you've got a really good quality of life and a kind of low cost of living when you compare it to the likes of, Paris or London, those sorts of places. So, it's ideal, actually. It's got the right ecosystem that is gently being nurtured. And, I believe that Berlin has the potential to become a global powerhouse in innovation over the next 10 years. So, it's an exciting place to be. You've probably been there and you know what the vibe is like. It's certainly a fantastic place to start up a business. And with the attraction of investors now, I think that it's got pretty much most of the ingredients for companies to succeed.
Yeah. And now when you get investments, just recently, I believe it was concluded end of May, right? In a way.
That's right. Yeah. I mean,
officially.
Interestingly, it was actually a really fast process for us. We were quite surprised. We were oversubscribed, actually. Even though we closed a record round of 650 million, we could have closed more. We just realized that we didn't need to, right? However, we were just very, very fortunate. We had investors queuing up to invest in us. So we were in a very privileged position from that perspective. And as a result of that, we were able to close the round relatively quickly. I mean, that was probably the fastest that we'd ever done it. So, record round closed in record time.
That's the 2 records at time. So you already doubled down, the record of amount and let's say valuation, but also time. And what do you plan to double down now? How do you speed up with such an amount of money? Can you handle, let's say, the growth and what is needed to handle this growth, on this path? Because you're going to be speeding up probably now.
Correct. Absolutely. Where we're going to double down. I mean, we're pretty much already doubled down. So I suppose we're going to triple down now. Then, expansion is really a key piece, right? So we've got further growth. Really, all the investments in growth, both in terms of talent into the company, but also into markets. I mean, both go hand in hand. So we'll be recruiting more people into the business and expanding into more markets. Europe, we're going to, obviously use the investment to consolidate the position in the existing markets, as well as expand into new ones. And then we're going to go globally. So we've got our eyes set for, markets outside of Europe over the next 2 years. And so there's going to be a very strong drive over the coming months. Certainly over the next 12 to 18 months, there will be a rapid ramping up of our operations as we go into new territories. So that's really where, a lot of the investment will go, as well as into new technology. You may know that we've opened a innovation hub in Paris. So we've got a deep tech unit based in Paris, principally because, France, or specifically Paris, is known to be the deep tech hub of Europe. So it made sense for us to have a team there. That's where all the talent is. So we'll be working a lot on looking at how we can use data more intelligently to provide smarter insurance in real time, and looking at predictive risk measures. So a lot of the investment will be going into, broadly speaking, 3 areas: talent, to attract, top talent into the company, expanding swiftly into new markets, as well as investing more into technology and developing our tech capabilities as we grow. So, there's, I guess, yes, we are tripling down in that sense, because those are the 3 kind of key areas. And it's a massively exciting time for wefox as we, deploy the new investment into these areas and begin our mission to become the #1 digital insurance company in the world within the next 10 years.
That's a very nice challenge. And yep, I think you have all the needed, tripling down, all the potential. Maybe a question here: how are you going to differentiate in the future? Because in 10 years' time, let's say, there's going to be, there are already competitors popping out and things. And I'm thinking of kind of Purple Cow from Seth Godin, book.
Yeah.
How are you going to make what you're going to focus on? How are you going to be different than any others? Is that enough, let's say, to conquer the new markets because you're going to be in front of them? Or it's the simplicity that you would like to define to be the #1 in this differentiation, to be as simple as possible? Or
yeah, I think the latter rather than the former would be our preference. So simplicity being key, and constantly focusing on making the end experience as simple as possible. Right. What we are very keen on at wefox is to ensure that the customers get a superior experience. Where we want to get to is having technology as an enabler, and having technology that acts as, as a personal friend, that's identifying risks before you're able to spot it, and then giving you advice and options for the next course of action that you wish to take. So that's where we see our differentiator. We've got, already underway the Internet of Things, IoT data revolution coming through. So the biggest challenge that we see, or one of the biggest challenges that we see, is how to harness that enormous amount of data for the benefit of the customer. And more importantly, how do you use that volume of data to be able to predict likely risks over the course of time? And where we want to get to is that the insurance product grows with you from the moment you're born to the moment you're very old and going to pass. That the insurance basically learns and grows with you over time and starts understanding every piece about you, so that it's really acting as a guard and really supporting you and guiding you, as a coach, as a friend, as that kind of thing. So that's where we see it. That is a very big ambition, right? But it's a very realistic ambition within the parameters of existing technology. right? Where we want to get to, that's a work in progress, because there's a lot of unknowns and there's a lot of regulatory hurdles as well to overcome. And as part of that, what we also foresee is the challenge around personal data. So what we want to make sure is that people's personal data is not being used against them. Rather, what we want to do is create the opportunity through wefox whereby people own their own data, right? Because we believe that's really important. In the industry at the minute, it's not really being looked at properly. We want to be the pioneers in that. We want to be able to say, listen, with the IoT data revolution coming, personal data is going to be a significant challenge. So let's find a way to be able to protect that, but hand it back entirely to our customers, and in a way act as a kind of self-regulatory mechanism, so that they have the data, they own the data, it belongs to them, and that they're only releasing information to us that they want to release, right? That's going to serve them better. So they're in total control over the entire agenda. And all we're doing is providing them the technology, the tools to be able to empower them in that process. That's where we want to get to. We believe that's the game changer. How we do that, that's going to be the journey. And over the next 10 years, we aim to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, really bold moves, let's say, forwards in triple down speed. Yeah. So, but I'm sure you're having also a lot of personal challenges in this way. So if I move to the last of the animals, top 5, the big 5, let's say, it's about the butterfly and butterfly effect, in a way. So it's really a personal factor, and I'm really amazed what you achieved, and also you personally, as part of this team. And for me, it's interesting to see then what is for you, for example, the biggest challenge you faced, for example, on this track. How do you handle this communication as your core in wefox?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. The biggest challenge, I suppose, that I've faced is supporting the company with its global aspiration. So it's been an absolute privilege and joy for me working at wefox. I am surrounded by some of the most talented people I could, really count as friends now, as well as colleagues. So, the biggest challenge has been to try and take the wefox story onto the global stage. As I said earlier, we are only a 6-year-old business. And I think that outside of Europe, we're relatively unknown. So that is the challenge. That was for me the biggest challenge, to find the way to be able to tell our story at a global level. And, recently we were very successful in achieving that. We appeared on CNBC's Brian Sullivan, The Exchange, one of the most, watched programs before the walls, the street opens up in New York. Brian's show is a must-watch program. So to get on that, as the lead story was a huge feather in the cap for us. But also going on, I think we appeared on something like 9 global television broadcast outlets. We had something like 93 radio station playbacks around the world. We end up having a phenomenal reach, an audience reach of something like 13.5 billion, and there's only 7 billion people on the planet, right? And we were focusing specifically at our core audience. So if you can imagine, that means that we touched, almost everyone on earth at least twice. But if we're looking at our core audience, right, which is significantly smaller than that number, we touched them multiple times. They saw us, heard about us, and that was done at a global level. So that for me was not only a significant challenge, but one that we met very successfully, and it's a real achievement. I'm very proud of my entire team for doing that. And it was a lot of hard work. I mean, we really did work 9 days to get to that level. But I would probably say that's probably the biggest challenge to date. Taking the wefox story onto the global stage, and then then kind of holding it up there. So yeah, that's been it so far. And I think, you know, the other challenge is really ongoing learning. You know, I mean, we are breaking new ground. We're a company that has very lofty ambitions, very bold ones of where we want to go. So, you know, it's not something that you can look across and say that there's a predecessor. Let's, you know, look at what they've done.
Yeah.
We are really cutting new ground. And as a result of doing that, we have to learn as we go. So you're in a way, you're shining a spotlight in the darkness, hoping that you're moving the right way. And thankfully, each time that we do, we cut a new path and we move forward in that way. So that is really quite a significant challenge. You know, the kind of frontier learning, right, on an almost daily basis, and trying to keep up with the speed. You know, we are moving at such a rapid speed. You know, a company like ours and others that are in similar territory, it's not for everybody. And so the speed that we operate at is frenetic, and we're only getting faster. So, you know, you've got to be able to be, you know, a sprinter, but with the idea of being able to know that you have to sprint for a marathon. So at some point, at some point you have to kind of ease the pace up and then get into a bit of a good cadence. But we're in that kind of getting out of the blocks, going super fast, heading it down the road. And then, you know, the next stage for us is to get into a cadence and a rhythm and continually build and use the momentum that we've now got to this point. So those are, for me, the thra major challenges that I've experienced. But, you know, challenges I absolutely have enjoyed and you know, have really loved. I've had nothing but an absolutely enjoyable time at wefox, and you know, long may that continue.
Yeah, it's amazing story. And since you must be pretty busy, I was just comparing now which discipline is moving. But like you said, I mean, you're moving actually at the beginning when you start the process. You probably go as a marathon, you know, in a way, or let's say 10 years marathon, you know, for the company. And then you start getting money and development, and it just keep, you know, the speeding up. It's not anymore marathon. It's like, I don't know, 1 kilometer is just 600 meters. You just sprint on 60 meters, but on full speed, you know. And it's yeah. And how do you in this to keep this pace? You know, what's your superpower? What keeps you, for example, going through your toughest days? You know, speeding up on this level.
Oh, you mean personally or as a business? I think personally, my superpower is it's a
tough question. I know. It's like,
yeah, it's a bit of an unusual. Yeah, for me, it's a difficult one to answer. What is my superpower? I believe, you know, just keeping kind of a positive attitude to the whole thing, and you know, I think really embracing it all, being open to the changes that are constant, and just acknowledging that actually that is the normal situation, and being able to adapt to change at a moment's notice. You know, I don't know if they're superpowers. I think they're just, you know, skills that I've acquired as a result. I mean, really, what you know, I'd probably say that my true superpower lies in my ability to be able to tell a fantastic story for wefox. You know, I mean, I am very, very lucky. I'm very privileged to be able to have all the raw ingredients from such an amazing company. And as I mentioned, I'm surrounded by incredibly talented people that make my job so much easier to be able to go out and say, hey, look, you know, we've just closed a world record Series C round of 650 million. I mean, journalists are just going, that's amazing, tell me more, you know. So so I mean, I am very, very lucky in that sense to be surrounded by such people. But I guess, you know, to be able to then take that kind of story and then take it to such a global stage. I mean, to give you an example, you know, Slowness, which is another startup, well, they're more than a startup now, they're a scale up, also based in Germany. I mean, you know, 24 hours after we made our announcement, they closed a behemoth round, a Series D round of 1 billion with a 12 or 13 billion valuation, right? Crazy. And it was absolutely mega round. Anyway, and they did a very good announcement, and to their credit, they got something like 650 or 700 media articles, right, generated coverage around the globe. We did 790 in day one, right? So really, where my expertise comes to its own is the ability to plan that kind of storytelling, even though, and I knew that there were bigger rounds than ours, but my plan was to be able to tell the biggest story, right? Yeah. Because my team had done their bit, they'd gone out and closed a bit, and so my part was, okay, I better match what my colleagues have done. They've gone and done a world record round, so I better go out there and deliver a world record Series C announcement. And to the credit to my entire team, we pulled it off. It was the biggest ever Series C announcement for an insurtech by a long way. Amazing. Certainly for a fintech, it was the biggest ever. And it's certainly one of the biggest ever. We can't quite get the whole data on it because the volume's too big. But we believe, it's certainly one of the biggest overall for a Series C, if not the biggest. So my team certainly stamped their mark on that one. So, to answer the question, I suppose, that is my superpower. That's probably why I'm doing this job, so I'm in the right place and using, my skill sets to, to full effect and again, this is being biased, but I am working for the best company in the world.
Yeah. So we can say, if I wrap up, in the superpower, you can tell bold stories.
I wouldn't say, bold stories. I can tell credible stories very boldly.
Okay, even better, even better. Because I saw in one quote, there was like, it's a bold, in a way, move of your CEO, and that's why I used bold. Yeah.
Yes, we are a bold company. I think that's one of the things that we've managed to do successfully is to set our sights very, very high. Acknowledge that they are going to be challenging, accept the fact that we may not necessarily hit them all the time, so long as we learn during that process and never give up. And again, to come back and answer the question about the superpower, I'd probably say that is really not just the company's superpower, probably mine as well. We don't give up. We're relentless. Where there's, as the expression goes, where one door closes, we just go and open another one.
Yeah. Just thinking, you're training rugby also, right? And maybe there's something to do with Scrum as your natural, even before you entered into IT, it could be connected with Scrum, and I was Scrum for 1 year, but I didn't gain enough muscles, maybe it's something about Scrum.
I've never heard anyone make that kind of analogy. That's beautiful. Yes, I did play rugby for a while there. It wasn't that great. And that's probably why I've got a big head and a bashed up face. I've been in too many, scrums and crashes and whatnot. But I mean, I guess rugby is a really good analogy for startup world, because it's really crashed a lot. You're really crashing into things, but you've got to pick yourself up and go again. And often you're a bit bruised from the last crash. You're like, oh God, do I really? Oh, okay, heck, I better go again. And then on the other side of it, these are other startups, for example, and some are way bigger. They're running it. You're thinking, oh God, what am I doing here? So, it's a wonderful analogy to use. So, yeah, I suppose playing rugby really got me prepared.
Yeah, it's like under your skin in a way. Yeah.
That's beautifully put. Really wonderful.
Okay, great. And we are slowly moving to the end. And just for the last question I have for you, what inspires you, for example? I mean, with all these things, what inspires you? Do you read something, to get such great results in great company? It must be something. I can see great art behind you, if I'm right.
Yeah, there's a beautiful piece of artwork here in my apartment. What inspires me? I mean, I'm inspired by many things, but I guess, the challenges really inspire me. The bigger the challenge, the more inspired I become. I'm inspired by purpose. I think that actually, if we can go into any endeavor where there is a greater purpose behind that, I think that actually we're not going to work, we're going there to fulfill something greater than ourselves. Those sorts of things inspire me. But there are also many people that inspire me. One of my greatest inspirations is my father. He's a wonderful man, and he sees the world in a very simple way. And he keeps me level-headed, even though I go to him and I go, Dad, it's amazing. We just closed this record 650 million round, and he goes, that's very good, son. I'm very proud of you. So what does that actually mean for you? So those sorts of things just keeps my feet on the ground, and he's a wonderful being. So he's an inspiration. Family. I have a son, a 15-year-old boy. He's a fantastic inspiration to me, because I look at him and I think, what kind of world is this boy going to inherit? And am I working for a company that's going to make the world a slightly better place for him? So those sorts of things. But then there are other, folks around. Our CEO, Julian Tyker, he's an inspirational human being. I count him as not just, my CEO and a mentor, but a friend. He really is a tremendous human being, and somebody that, I feel absolutely honored and privileged to be working with. And then there are other kind of inspirations around. One of my greatest heroes, if I can use that expression, is Nelson Mandela. And there's a wonderful quote that, he said, which was, I never fail. I either succeed or I learn. And that has always stuck with me. And then there's another one. He's a former British Prime Minister, Benjamin Disraeli. And is a famous line that he also said, where he said, people are not, I'm paraphrasing it, because he said it slightly different in his time, but he said, people are not creatures of circumstance. Circumstances are creatures of men. So in other words, we have the power to create the world around us. Rather than being seen as, or perceiving the world as doing things. So, we're not passive victims, we're active agents. And so we can shape our destiny. We can take control of that agenda, by just really applying ourselves. So those are my inspirations. There are many more. We could have a wonderful conversation on this for hours at end. But, those are the kinds of people that I look to. I read a lot, obviously, about famous people who have done successful things. I'm very curious also about, the human capacity. What can we do? What is our potential as human beings? What are we capable of? How do we see the world? And, just because we see it in this way, is it necessarily true? Can we change our viewpoint on that in a given moment? I've experienced that we can. I've observed it at close quarters, and me personally, and then that's a story for another day, my own kind of journey and change from where I was only about 3 years ago to where I am today is, monumental change. And so I've kind of been my own witness and surrounded by it as well. So I'm a true believer in being able to shape your destiny by making that decision, going all in and going after it. And I think having all of that and going into a company like wefox, where you are, shaping the future, right? That, I can carry that momentum into those kind of businesses, and then also live it and breathe it on a daily basis. So that's kind of a long-winded way of saying that I have many, inspirations, and I draw from it as often and as daily as possible. And I'm very grateful. I truly am grateful for everything that I have, and for the company that I work for, and the opportunities that I get given. So it really is a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Amazing. But I can see that you're really inspired, and that you cannot reach to the stars. You can shoot to the moon, but if you want come to the stars, it's really inspiration how you explained, and I really enjoyed. Who would you like to hear, if you could nominate somebody to join us in the future Fast Forward podcast?
Oh, if you could fast forward into the future, who would I? Well, oh, wow, that's an amazing question. Anybody? You mean anybody at
Your
all?
choice. Yeah.
Who would I love to hear from? Oh gosh, there are so many people I'd love to hear
Somebody
from.
already said president of US, so Biden is taken. You know, so we work in that. Anybody else?
Okay. Oh gosh, you know, one of my biggest what do you call inspirations, actually, someone that I've really always wanted to meet. I had a good fortune of actually participating in a live like webinar show, right? And he was there, but it's Tony Robbins, right?
Okay.
I find Tony Robbins a completely fascinating human being, and I absolutely admire the way that he approaches things, and he is really an inspiration, actually. And I pay a lot of attention. I'd love to actually be in a podcast with him, and or just I'd love to just meet him and shake his hand and just say, my goodness, you're a true inspiration. So he's certainly one person I'd love to meet. There's many more, I'm sure, if you gave me a little bit longer to think about it. But he immediately jumps to my mind.
Yeah, he's great. So I'm also inspired by him, and I think he's having amazing how he's developing people and what people are able to do. Being inspired by him. It's
yeah,
great.
Indeed.
Amazing. So that's about it. So thank you very much for the recording this podcast. I was really enjoying. I'm inspired for not a day. I think all my stay here in Belgrade. So it will be quite some time.